The Empire of the Star Wars Legends universe had dozens of Star Dreadnoughts, each apparently taken out by no more than 2 people based on what we learned in the last video. But the New Republic was a lot more selective in which superships would make it into their repertoire. They also stole most of them from the Empire. While the New Republic had more resources than the Rebel Alliance and could afford to build their own superships if they felt like it, their reliance on fighter craft continued into the post-Endor period. Many strategists in the New Republic believed the massive dreadnoughts were entirely unsuited to the battles of the day. The doctrinal focus on fighter craft and smaller capital ships was so entrenched that even captured Imperial hardware wasn't put to immediate use. The first confirmed capture of one of these dreadnoughts was the 19,000-meter Lusitania, sister ship of the Executor, which we also covered in the prior video on the Imperial dreadnoughts. It was hidden under the surface of Coruscant until being used by Intelligence Director Isan Isard to escape the planet after its liberation by the New Republic, and was then captured at the Battle of Typhera in 7 APY, or years after the Battle of Yavin. With this new, albeit heavily damaged weapon, the New Republic realized the potential they had in their hands, and promptly stationed it at the Scarl shipyards to use as a medical research facility. They likely did this by repurposing quarantine zones built during the development and testing of bioweapons under its former Imperial owners. Funnily enough, Scarl had been where the Executor itself first underwent construction. Lusitania was named by author Michael Stackpole after a KGB prison, which makes sense considering its use by Isard as a prison as well. While the Lusitania was the only one confirmed captured in an actual story by this point, the Essential Guide to Warfare shows another captured dreadnought, one of the 7,200-meter Bellor class. The Bellors never got mentioned in any actual stories, and they're not even named in the Essential Guide to Warfare, but this one is shown as part of either a Rebel or New Republic fleet full of captured Imperial hardware at an undisclosed time. It is shown after a section on the capture of Kuat, which, if that means anything, would put it as being in Republic possession shortly after Typhera as well. The picture is possibly even meant to show ships captured while under production at Kuat already, given they're all Imperial designs other than the Falcon. Considering it is shown in fleet formation, this may mean that, unlike Lusitania, the Bellor was small enough to still be considered worth using at the time by New Republic Fleet Command. Whatever the status of the Bellor at the time of its capture, eventually the campaign surrounding Palpatine's return and Dark Empire saw the deployment of massive hordes of Imperial Star Dreadnoughts, which convinced the New Republic that they should be using more themselves. In the Imperial version of this video, I had a somewhat larger cutoff on size, but considering the smaller number of larger New Republic ships, I'm going to be talking about battlecruisers here as well, for reasons we'll get into more once we're talking about their homegrown designs. But the Dark Empire campaigns led to at least one new capture for the New Republic, a World Devastator. These were developed by the Empire as super weapons, intended to be used to strip a planet bare as they tried to do to Mon Calamari, using the resources to upgrade themselves. But most were ruined or destroyed when R2-D2 uploaded a virus to them, making them eat each other and saving the homeworld of Admiral Akbar. This one, at least, was saved and used by the New Republic to recycle old ships, although it's unknown if it ever served again in a military capacity. Lusitania finally did re-enter service under Wedge Antilles' command by 11 ABY at the latest, the same year as Palpatine's final death. It continued under Wedge's command, eventually taking part in the Battle of Arinda, where it faced off against the Reaper, another member of its class under the command of Imperial Supreme Commander Gilad Pellaeon. This battle turned out to be one of the final major Imperial victories, and would have resulted in Lusitania's destruction had its starfighters not punched through the Imperial interdictor line, allowing it to escape. The ship was eventually back under Wedge's command during the Yuuzhan Vong War for the defense of Burleus, where Wedge turned it into a giant explosive spear, using it to destroy a Yuuzhan Vong world ship along with killing one of the Yuuzhan Vong's best commanders in an operation Wedge labeled Emperor's Spear. By this point, the New Republic had begun building their own dreadnoughts, but Senator Poe, who hoped to position himself as the new chief of state after Borsk Velia's death, still described Lusitania, possibly hyperbolically, as the most powerful ship in the fleet. Before we do get to the homebrew designs of the New Republic, there's one more captured Imperial dreadnought to discuss, the Guardian. Guardian had originally been stationed near Coruscant before being taken by its commanding officer, Admiral Guindrommel, to his homeworld of Aplovis. It was then captured by the New Republic in 16 ABY, and it was quickly taken as the new flagship for Admiral Akbar as part of the New Republic's Third Fleet. From there, much like Lusania, it fought against Gilad Pelion and his array of superships in the Imperial skirmishes. Unlike the Lusania's failure at Orinda, when Pelion and Akbar met at Anx Minor, Guardian struck a major blow against the ever-diminishing Empire. An Imperial battlecruiser and weapon deathbed, the Rakehell, was destroyed by Guardian, and the resulting shockwave took out 6 Imperial-class Star Destroyers, along with causing significant damage to the Mediator, which was possibly Pelion's largest remaining ship following the destruction of Reaper at Selenon. This victory ended the Imperial Skirmishes campaign and directly contributed to the Empire pursuing peace talks 2 years later. While Akbar would retire over this period, Guardian continued to see use within the New Republic. It outlived the Lusania and was active late into the Yuzon Vong War and probably beyond. It was at least briefly stationed at Kashyyyk during the Yuzon Vong War, joining a fleet being assembled by Bothan Admiral Trace Crefet before eventually participating in the liberation of Coruscant. While the plans weren't acted on for a long time, some in the New Republic fleet, including Akbar himself, did argue in favor of the New Republic building their own dreadnought shortly after the Battle of Endor. The Mon Calamari Viscount class had been in different stages of planning for years, only entering service in 25 ABY, the first year of the Yuzon Vong War. The first member of its class, the Viccount itself, was actually a smaller prototype 3-kilometer ship, but the following 2 members, Bounty and Crana, were 17,000 meters long, making them nearly as long as an Executor but somewhat bigger in volume. There's a lot of asterisks on these sizes, so we'll get there in a minute. The Viccount itself was first seen making a flyby on Coruscant for the New Republic government 2 weeks after its completion, but later in the war it was used as part of a trio of the fleet's heaviest ships, including itself and the Guardian, in the liberation of Coruscant. The 2 other members of the class, the Bounty and Crana, were still under construction for most of the war. Crana was sent to Kuwait in 27 ABY, where it was intended to be used as orbital artillery, but it was destroyed while en route, away from the protective planetary defenses. The Bounty, on the other hand, remained at Mon Calamari, and despite its unfinished state, it managed to deter Yuzon Vong attacks and continued service beyond the New Republic and into the Galactic Alliance, where it fought against a rebelling Bothan fleet, and it was part of Cha Nyathel's Galactic Alliance forces in the Second Battle of Fondor. That battle gets a bit hard to explain, though. The other New Republic ship class which may fit into the Dreadnought category is the Mediator class, which was also introduced in Vector Prime alongside the Viscount, and which also sees use throughout the Yuzon Vong War, including at the liberation of Coruscant. The Mediator doesn't have a design, so what you'll be seeing is the design by Oseritzel for the Empire War Expanded mod. The inaugural member of the class, also named the Mediator, was described as half the length of the Viscount, which was later established at that 3-kilometer length. But that's the result of a retcon in the Essential Guide to Warfare, trying to clean up different numbers being used across different sources, giving the smaller size to the Viscount itself, and the larger size to the Bounty and Crana, which didn't exist when the class was originated in Vector Prime. The Viscount itself, as the sole representative for its entire class at that point, had previously had that whole range of sizes applied to just it, and Jaina Solo, who'd been around pretty large ships her whole life, was blown away by the size of the Viscount. So it seems like the intent there was that the Viscount be closer to the 17-kilometer size, with the Mediator being about half of that. My personal interpretation has always been that the Viscount, Bounty, and Crana size retcon makes sense, but the 1500 meter resulting size for the Mediator doesn't. So my personal opinion there is that the larger size should be used for the Mediator, but that's of course always up for interpretation. The trio of ships I mentioned earlier as explicitly having some of the heaviest Galactic Alliance ships and former New Republic ships during the Battle of Coruscant already included the Viscount and the Guardian, but it had a third member of Indeterminate class, the Harbinger. This ship was used by Garm Bel Iblis as his flagship by at least 28 ABY, when he took it to join the trap being laid by the Jedi at Ebac 9. A class is never given for this ship, and neither is any other description, but to qualify as one of the most powerful in the fleet, it probably had to be a step above the other standard capital ships present. It likely isn't a Viscount, since the Essential Guide to Warfare seems to cover all of them by name, so to me it makes most sense to consider it a member of the Mediator class, given the New Republic did seem to have a few of them. The line in Agents of Chaos Heroes Trial by James Lucino, which says there's a growing number of Mediators, does also say there's more Viscounts, but it calls them Corellian Viscount Star Defenders, so I think this was an error and they meant a different kind of ship, the actually Corellian Strident, which I think is supported by the fact that Stridents were introduced properly with no typos in the second Agents of Chaos book, and Lucina wouldn't be the kind of person to make that kind of lore mistake. There's no specific named examples of the Strident class, though we do know they existed in relatively significant numbers. There's also no design and no real specifications, so the design you're seeing for this section is actually designed by Valerie, also for the Empire at War Expanded mod. Because the Star Defender classification was assigned to both the Strident and the Viccount, they were often interpreted by fans as being a Dreadnought class as well. 6 years after their introduction, they made another appearance in the Legacy of the Force series, where they did finally get some hints as to their size. They were described as not quite matching the Dodonna, a Galactic-class battle carrier, implying they were somewhat smaller. The Galactic class was a successor to the Imperial-class Star Destroyer and had a similar size, so if that description of the Strident is accurate, it doesn't actually qualify as a Star Dreadnought or even a battlecruiser. But I think the lack of clarity on the issue makes it worth at least bringing up. A few other ships did come into the fold as the New Republic reformed itself into the Galactic Alliance, like the Mediator, which keeps coming up, but that goes beyond the scope of today's video. Thank you for watching, and let me know if there's another topic you'd like to see covered on the channel in the comments.